Ooh, RB means Raffle Brothers. RB means Raffle Brothers. Hello and welcome to episode 53 of Brews Less Traveled, the podcast exploring the best uncharted craft beer cities across America. I'm your host, Brian. And if you don't know why I just started the episode by yelling Raffle Brothers, then I recommend going back and listening to our previous episode. Check that out. Also, my power is flickering right now. So if I just abruptly jump out of this, it's because I lost power and I'll try to get back on. Just going to prompt everybody with that. I'm happy to be welcoming back a friend of the pod for this series of episodes. Please join me in welcoming back the wonderful MC. MC, how's it going? I think you're muted.
There we go. I clicked join audio. It's like I haven't been doing this for 2 years yet.
Cut that.
Really good. Thanks, Brian. I'm good. I'm really glad to be back. Yeah. How are you?
Oh, I am doing great. There are very ominous storm clouds outside. It's very dark here. And like I said, my power keeps flickering. So fingers crossed. But I had a great Memorial Day weekend. Really good time here. One of my local breweries just on the street, Grist House, celebrated their 8th anniversary. So we went down there, had a good time. My daughter was dancing to the music. I drank very good beer. It was wonderful.
That's awesome. Yeah. Our brewery just celebrated their 8th anniversary a couple weekends ago too. So must have been a good year to start breweries. 2014, I think.
Yeah.
Cool.
Here in Pittsburgh, there was like 4 breweries at that time. So it was a very adventurous time to start a brewery, a craft brewery nonetheless. And you mentioned your brewery. You should plug your brewery.
Not my brewery,
but not your brewery.
It's called Logboat, and we're in Columbia, Missouri. So yep, we just celebrated 8 years. I did not go to the 8-year celebration because I was happily on a fishing boat in remote Ontario, Canada. So that's what I've been up to, fishing, drinking a lot of Labatt Blue.
I saw that you were fishing on your Instagram. I didn't know you had crossed the border to do so.
Yeah, so my dad and I have been planning this trip since before the pandemic. So we finally got up there, took a little remote flight on a little propeller plane out into the middle of nowhere, and sat on a fishing boat for like 3 days and caught walleye and pike and lake trout. It was really fun.
Wow, that sounds like an awesome time.
Yeah.
We started talking about your brewery. You did something very cool since the last time we had you co-hosting on this show. Tell us about the beer that you brewed at Logboat.
So I'll preface this by saying I am the first woman in these 8 years to work in production at Logboat. So pretty exciting that this year they encouraged me to brew a Pink Boots beer. So for anybody that doesn't know, the Pink Boots Society is like a women in beer society. It's international. And then there are like local chapters. So I am a part of the St. Louis chapter, which is like 2 hours away from me, not super close. So I'm kind of all by myself here in Columbia. We have a local chapter. But my bosses were really supportive of me being a part of Pink Boots Society and still wanted me to brew something. So they bought me the Pink Boots hop blend, which is just a blend of hops that Yakima Chief and Pink Boots Society puts together. They release for a collaborative brew day. And people are like generally encouraged to brew with the women of their chapter and their brewery on or around International Women's Day. So I was about a month late. I brewed mine on April 7th, but close.
Still did it.
Yep. And so I wrote a recipe, and then I brewed on it's just like a little half barrel system. It's like a glorified homebrew R&D system that I brewed on. But I brewed a double dry hopped IPA with these hops that are that was part of the hop blend. So
Yeah.
the hop blend I used was, gosh, I'm gonna get this wrong. It's been a while, but it was
Got it.
Idaho Gem, Laurel, El Dorado, and Azeka, I believe.
Ooh.
It was a really, really tasty blend. If you guys have had any of those hops, you kind of can gather what that beer is going to taste like a little bit.
Fruit
But
punch,
yeah,
basically.
yep.
Yeah.
And it has changed a lot. It's like developed a lot since sitting in the keg for a little bit. I just kegged it. I just have it on tap in the production facility. So we've just kind of been slowly working on the kegs a little bit. But yeah, it's like dry, but has a nice, like smooth mouthfeel to it, even though it finishes nice and dry. There's definitely a hop like bite presence to it. I put in some 15-minute hops, so there's a little bit of like boil bitter hops to it, but then I mostly threw in everything at flame out, like 5 minutes after flame out. So it's very, very aromatic, like, yeah, nice and soft, but not so soft that you don't get any hops at all. So yeah, then I double dry hopped it, put it in kegs and let it condition for about 3 weeks.
Nice.
Pretty proud of the final product, I have to say.
That sounds awesome. Well, I wish I could easily get to Columbia, Missouri and try that beer, but unfortunately, I don't think I can before it runs out. But
well, next year I'm going to brew it on the big system and I'll send you a can. How about?
That would be wonderful.
There we go. The plan.
Well, I'm going to hold you to it.
I will.
It's a new month, and that means we got a new featured city. And our next featured city was actually the home of one of my dad's favorite authors. Shout out, Dad. He's watching. Also, one of my favorite authors, James Crumley, a town in the plains of the West, originally referred to as the Gate of Hell by French fur trappers that witnessed the bloody conflicts over bison in this area. This area would actually be known as Hellgate until 1886, when it was renamed Missoula, Montana. MC, have you ever been to Montana?
I haven't. I'd love to go.
All right. Well,
especially now that they renamed that city. I don't think I would have gone when it was called Hellgate, but I'd love to go now.
I 100% would have gone when it was called Hellgate, especially if it was like an all-day metal festival that like replaced Ozfest. Hellgate 2022. Get your tickets. 3-day festival. I have been to Missoula, and it was absolutely wonderful. If you're watching, you could see behind us the big M that's on the hill overlooking the beautiful town of Missoula. And as someone that just talked a lot about the fishing you've done, I have to tell you, you would love Missoula. It sits near two great rivers of Montana. There is wonderful fishing all up and down both of those rivers. And I am going to make it my goal for these next 5 episodes to convince you to go to Missoula.
I don't think I have to be convinced. Like, it sounds fantastic. Like, it looks beautiful. Everything I've seen of Montana looks beautiful. I would say that previously I would say that I wasn't sure if there'd be any like good beer, which is really important to me on a trip, but I guess we're about to find out about some good beer.
Well, that's definitely what we're going to do for these next 5 episodes, is find out about some great beer that comes from Missoula, Montana. And hello, first of all, to our beer club subscribers tuning in, and a special hello to our new subscribers. How you doing? Any of you watching, have you been to Missoula? Throw your thoughts in the chat. We'd love to hear about it. And this month we got 3 great breweries to feature from the city of Missoula. We're featuring Draftworks, Kettle House, and Imagination. And we've got some excellent beers and some really fun episodes with a special thing planned to cap off the end of this month. 12 beers of Christmas subscribers will be excited, but we'll leave the rest of that surprise for later.
Intent.
And MC, what are we drinking tonight?
Well, so we are going to drink That's what she said cream ale. Oh, excited about a cream ale. I love cream ale.
Nice. Yeah, definitely an underappreciated style. This one coming to us from Draftworks. And yeah, well,
Ready
we're
to
going to be
do it?
kicking us. Yeah, let's do it. We're doing it. This is a great beer. This is a solo episode. It's one of those freewheeling episodes, those non-traditional episodes. What do we? I can't remember what we call them. We call them the fun episodes. All the episodes are fun, but it's just MC and I tonight hanging out, talking
Little.
about beer. Yeah.
All right. Cheers.
Well, cheers. Cream ale. Laura, our producer, said she drove through Montana when she was a kid and it was boring, very flat. There are lots of mountains, lots of hills in Missoula. But now that she's a beer lover, I think she thinks she would love exploring the state. I just completely forgot how to read properly there. So thoughts on this beer?
Yeah, Pat says that cream ales are hard to come by. I agree. They're so good when you can, though. I lived in DC for a long time where Genesee cream is like, your go-to beer. So I've been missing a good cream ale. I really enjoy this one. You definitely get that sweet cornness to it. It's definitely sweeter than like your normal like American lager.
Yeah, and that's a cool thing about American cream ale, especially American. I guess they're all American style cream ale. Oh, I'm supposed to be the beer expert. I should know where cream ales originate from. I think they're American.
But
Oh man,
they're
um,
American,
they're American. Okay,
but I
cool.
think they got kind of like honed in Canada, actually.
Oh,
hmm I don't know much about that history. I know that, German settlers were kind of the first in America, were the first folks to start to experiment with cream ales, but then they weren't super popular here because American lagers were very, very popular.
hmm.
And so the Canadians were really who like crafted this style until it became more popular in America again.
That makes sense that the Germans would have influence on it because I had read previously that when they first came over here to America, the barley here is much higher protein content, which
Right.
makes it really hard to make really nice, clear, clean lagers. So they would often substitute corn for a lot of that, and that's where corn kind of became a brewing grain. But there's lots of grains in this. This is obviously a very thoughtfully
Right.
designed recipe. There's 2 row and Munich malts in here. There's also flaked corn and flaked barley. And I think those 2 flaked grains are what's really helping the mouthfeel of this beer, the really smoothness that everybody's commenting on. And excuse me, Galena and Fuggle hops too. So there's a nice light hop character to it. Only 18 IBUs and a 5.2% beer, but they're there. They're there a little bit.
Very, very drinkable.
Hmm. Yeah, very much. And as people are remarking, it's a style that you don't see very often. Genesee cream ale is kind of like the model, the goat, I guess,
Yeah.
of cream ales. But I think they're making a comeback. Just down the street from me is Grist House Brewery. They have their Creek Crusher cream ale that's on pretty often. And I think this new appreciation for crispy beers, all
hmm
the crispy boys and crispy girls out there are really starting to appreciate a cream ale as
Right.
just a nice change up from a Helles, a Pilsner, a Kolsch.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the hop profile being a little different than what you might normally get out of like a German lager, out of like a Helles or a Pilsner or something, makes it a little more interesting. And also like the malt profile gives it a little bit more mouthfeel than those super crispy, dry. Sometimes you want a little bit more than something like ultra refreshing. And I think this is a nice middle ground between an ale and a lager, which it, obviously is since it's brewed with ale yeast, but lagered to condition. So it's kind of in the middle there.
Yeah, and I think you definitely wouldn't find Munich malt in your typical Pilsner. So it's nice, like you get that depth of a big beer, but it doesn't have the finish of a bigger beer. And Certainly doesn't sit in your stomach the same way a bigger beer does too.
Right. Yep. I like that this time of year.
Mhm. Definitely good lawnmower beer, good porch beer, as they say. Nick and Nora said in 2015 they visited Tamarack Brewing Company. I saw them when I was in downtown. Um, they said they only had one night in Missoula. That's sad. It's a good town. It's a fun town. So let's talk more about our featured city, Missoula. Missoula's a town about 80,000 residents. It's mostly fueled by college that's there, University of Montana, and a hospital. There's a big hospital that employs a lot of people in the area. But there's also about a dozen craft breweries in the city. So like that's a pretty good amount of breweries for 80,000 people.
Yeah, I would say that's a lot of breweries for 80,000 people.
Yes. And statistically, I could prove that Missoula is actually third in the country when it comes to breweries per capita. Quick recap on breweries per capita, mainly for myself, because I absolutely messed this up on a previous episode. Breweries per capita means the number of breweries per 100,000 residents. And Montana at large has about 1 million residents and 105 breweries total. So you do the math, that's about 13 breweries per 100,000 residents, putting them third in the country. That's like pretty good. The only two states that are ahead of them are Maine and Vermont.
Mm,
Ever heard of the beer scenes in those cities or in those states? Like,
pretty good.
it's really good company to be in. Two states that are very well known. We could say those are brews more traveled, certainly.
Right. Yes.
Love that pun.
Yes.
But I don't think most people would recognize Montana as that kind of a state that has appreciation for beer like that.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I think we've all probably had a moose drool and loved it. You can definitely appreciate Montana for that. But I'm looking forward to like drinking some non-moose drool Montana beers, really getting to know the Montana beer scene a little bit better.
yeah, of course, MC is referencing Moose Droll, a American brown ale from Big Sky Brewing, which is one of, if not the biggest brewery, one of the biggest breweries in the state of Montana. And you could definitely see their effects and hear about their effects in Missoula. You know, one of these things that you find when you go to a lot of really good beer cities is that there's this like, I don't know what the right word for it is. It like they're like almost like grandmother breweries, like feeder breweries that have been around for a while. They grow because they entered in the distro era and they were able to grow at an exponential rate, make a lot of jobs for people, get very regimented and deliberate with how they do things, and train people to be very, very good brewers, very, very good industry professionals. And then those people go out and start their own places or become a head brewer at another slightly bigger, slightly big place, or do something else in the industry that has an impact. And when you visit these breweries in Missoula, you hear about that coming from Big Sky, certainly.
And does Big Sky focus on like American styles, or do they have like a concentrated focus with their beers at all that you see in the outpouring of beers coming out of Montana now?
I will be honest, I am only familiar with Moose Droll. I know them as kind of just a classic American craft beer place. They're very well known for Moose Droll. And I didn't see a ton of Big Sky around whenever I was in Missoula. I did not visit their brewery because I tend to just visit the places that we're going to feature on the podcast and then spend the time doing other cool stuff around town.
Well, and it sounds like plenty of breweries to visit. You don't need to go to like the big ones.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll get out to another one just because it's like, I mean, what else am I going to do tonight? I got nothing else to do. I got no more meetings.
My job is to go to breweries. Maybe I'll go to one more brewery.
Maybe I'll go to one more.
You, Ryan.
Tug my arm. I guess I could spill the beans now. Last month, our good friend of the pod and producer of the pod, Laura, had to fill in for me 1 month or 1 week. And that was because I had some serious travel issues concerning my trip to Missoula. Actually, I missed a flight and that screwed up my whole week in my travel and cut my visit short to Missoula. And yeah, the effects are resonating until now. Laura got to host that awesome episode with Nico, and I had one day in Missoula to run around and visit all the cool things that I could possibly visit in one day, and then crash into my bed and take a 6 a.m. flight to the next city, which we're going to feature next month, which is so yeah. Just to tie things back again, go back and listen to last month's episode to catch up on them. You'll understand all those references.
We will.
So another cool thing I saw another cool thing I picked up on in my research is Montana kind of really is the embodiment of what this podcast is meant to be. We've been talking about how like you don't expect it to be that big beer state. I don't think a lot of people expect it to have like that many breweries, that strong of a scene. And there's literally like a solid brewery in just about every town in Montana. And something I heard a lot around town was that Montanans love stuff from Montana. They support their local businesses, and they really, I think you find that when you get in somewhat more rural areas, they really take pride in things that come from that area, and will support small businesses and will support local places. And I think that's what's allowed craft beer to thrive in a place that people wouldn't think.
Yeah, especially with like the pandemic and everything. Like I'm sure that distribution of beer from Montana was not very high. I mean, they would have to really rely on like their local culture to support them. So to hear that there are so many small breweries that are also very successful is really, really shows how supportive their local community is to them. That's great. And that you could notice it just being there for less than 24 hours, it must be very apparent.
Yeah, it's definitely something that everybody talked about in the brewery meetings that I had and the people that I was talking to at breweries. And even before I got out to the breweries, I went in town and visited a small coffee shop and was talking to people there, and talked to some other people on the street, my Uber drivers, and everybody really talked about that pride that people took in those local shops. And when I eventually made my way downtown, you could see it reflected in every corner that you turned. There was like not a single chain business. There was a ton of great local shops. I had bagels from this place called Bagels on Broadway, great coffee. Shout out to the girl working the counter that had a Sweet Death shirt on. Shout out to like the 3 death metal fans here that got that reference. And I had pizza at this place called Biga Pizza, which was phenomenal. Like, pretty sure it was wood-fired oven pizza, but it was great. And like, it was just all small local businesses throughout this whole little town where there's mountains all around, there's hills all around. You feel like you're in nature, and you could see how people took pride in other things that developed in this, kind of rugged landscape in the city that literally began known as Hell's Gate. Like,
Much of an improvement, it sounds like, since it was called Hell's Gate. Yeah. Nick and Nora say that the river walk was really cool. Do you know about the river walk, or like the rivers going through town?
I absolutely do. One of the coolest things I think I saw when I was walking around town, like immediately after I left that bagel shop, is this thing called Brennan's Wave. It's on the Clark Fork River, and basically someone, possibly Brennan, took a huge rock and like put it in the river, and that creates a wave that people surf year round.
Wow.
Yes.
They surf it on a river? Oh, that
Yeah.
is wild.
So they kind of just wade into the water here. For our audio listeners, I am showing pictures. You can check our Instagram. I'll share the pictures on there. But yeah, people kind of wade into the water. They got wetsuits on. They kind of ride this wave for a couple minutes. Some of them were doing tricks and spinning around.
And look, you can see downtown. Is that downtown behind them?
So downtown is like behind me from where I'm taking this picture. Off in the distance are some of the hills in Montana, and that's the bridge that goes from like downtown area to another one of the kind of more hip neighborhoods in the area. And yeah,
Wow.
bunch of people hanging out down there. I walked up and down the river walk, which is where that Brennan's wave is, and saw a bunch of different people going in, surfing for a little bit, coming out. New crew came in, and it seemed like it was a hot spot. It was just last month. It was towards the end of May. It was in the 30s when I was there, and it was snowing when people were surfing, but that was like not slowing down the flow of surfers that were coming to surf this one wave on the river. So
I guess that's how you got to live if you live in Montana.
I mean, like, yeah, they're just making the best of what they have. They want to surf.
Insane.
They don't have a wave. They don't have an ocean. They don't have currents. So like, hey, let's take this big rock. Let's throw it in the river. I mean, I don't. You probably look at the story. I probably should have. Yeah, we don't care if it's dangerous. Somebody can get stuck under here. But it works out for us. It was pretty rad, and like you could see people walking down the river walk. They would see them go and hang out on these like overlooks that they had. People were walking by, and they knew some of the surfers, and you could tell it was like a thing that was just known in the community, and it was almost like a gathering place for people to hang out and, you know, shoot the shit on a Thursday morning and then go on with their day. Like if you're surfing that early in the morning, like that's the start to your day. What else are you going to do that day? Like that wasn't the thing that they're doing for the day. That's just like, that's the start.
Day. Everything else is easy after that.
Yeah.
Throw yourself in degree water. The rest of the day only has to be easier.
Yes. It's all downhill from there. And that's the proper use of that expression. That's a pet peeve that I have. Everybody misuses that expression.
I agree. I think that I'll just say before we jumped on here, you were telling me something else really cool about the rivers and Missoula specifically, and beer and the breweries. Oh,
I was trying to say that for next week.
Oh, I guess we'll have to just wait to find out.
Yeah, we'll talk about next week. There's a very cool company that operates there that combines our love of rivers and our love of beer. But as Nick mentioned in the chat, some of the weirdest beer laws in the country, wildest as well. All the breweries close at 8. If you make beer on site, like if you have like a brew pub model, which, you know, these are mostly small breweries, most of them do, they can only sell you 48 ounces of beer per day.
To consume, or can you only take away 48 ounces?
Good distinction there. To consume on site. I don't know if they had any restrictions in terms of beer you could take with you, but yeah, you could only have 48 ounces on site. All the breweries closed at 8. Some of them closed at 10, but those were the ones that had like, they had some separate address or separate loophole thing that they were working, where this building that was connected to their brewery was their tap room and it had a different address. And because it's not the same address, they could stay open till 10 and they could kind of skirt those laws. That's one of the funny things you see is like
introducing it if they're a different business.
Yeah, well, not even different business, different address is what the brewery, what one of the owners at Draught was actually telling me. Just different address, and people do it. So weird beer laws will not escape us.
Yeah, like I don't know. One of my favorite, M. Sauter, I've probably said this on the podcast before. Pints and Panels. She says you don't have to drink a lot of beer to love beer. And I think that, maybe we could all learn from Missoula a little bit, that 48 ounces of beer might be plenty. I think that's a great idea.
It's not bad, and it makes sense in a place like Missoula where a lot of people live just outside of the town, and if you got to drive on like
Right, probably not a
dark
lot of
highways, not a ton of walkability. I can't remember if there were like big street lights on the highways either. Like it seemed like it was very dark when it was night. Pat asked, yes, they do tasters. I got a flight at Draftworks, but it still just counts towards your 48 ounce limit. So weird beer laws. Shout out to our friends from Minnesota who won some great new beer laws last month. We're going to be pulling for our friends in Montana to maybe get some of those loosened. I don't disagree with you, MC, but like I don't think like they should regulate it and be like you can't have more than 48 ounces. Like if we all want to take in the practice of like, hey, I'm going to limit myself to just 2 at this place tonight, and I'm going to call it a night. Like, good for you.
Right.
I think that's something we should all try, but I think it's kind of
also 48 ounces is very different to a lot of people. 48 ounces to me, that is a lot of beer. I am 4'11". I am a very small person. So 40 ounces of beer is plenty. That is not the case for everybody.
I mean, that is a pretty sufficient amount of beer. Like, what is it? 3 pints.
4 12-ounce beers.
4 12-ounce beers. Oh yeah, that's why I think in pint math. I couldn't do the math in my head, but yeah, everything I had was 12 ounces that was served to me, either 12 ounces or like 4-ounce tasters. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's cool. Like just have a few, but I don't know where I'm going for this. I'm bordering on advocating for people like drinking a bunch of beer at breweries and being able to go to other brews, and that's not something I want to. I don't want to advocate for that, and I don't have a joke to come out of that either. Just really crashed and burned out of that.
Just know, Missoula, you might have to go to a couple of different breweries if you want to drink more than 48 ounces.
That said, almost every brewery opened at like 12 or 2, even on like Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So they kind of bridge that gap, give you some time to drink, take some beers home, spend time with your family,
Go on a walk. You're in Montana.
Yeah, go on a walk. Maybe I'm getting this all wrong. maybe that's wrong too. You maybe shouldn't go walking out into the dark in Montana after 8 when you just drank a bunch of beers and you're wandering out with a 4-pack smelling like a tasty malty treat for a grizzly bear.
Right. Fall into a river walking downtown.
Get run over by a surfer.
By a surfer.
They probably do it at night. I should have went back down there at night. They probably have headlamps on. They probably put on headlamps and surf at night.
Extreme surfing.
Now we got to incorporate the bear into the surfing somehow. Oh boy, this is ridiculous. All right. I'm excited to share more about Missoula over these next episodes, and excited that MC will be joining us. MC, anything else you're excited to learn about in Missoula?
I know so little about Montana in general that I'm just looking forward to like learning everything. All I think about when I think about Montana is like a lot of space and big sky country. And I'd love to hear more about the culture and the culture around the beer, what people like to drink up there. Yeah, I'm just excited to talk to some folks and see what gets them excited about beer in Missoula.
And we are most certainly going to do that over these next few episodes featuring Missoula. We got great beers, great breweries to feature. We got some great guests lined up for our later episodes, our coming up episodes. It's great to have MC back. MC, plug the brewery you work at again. Everybody go to.
It's called Logboat. This is the label. It's called Logboat. Yeah, we're in Columbia, Missouri. We don't distribute outside of Columbia or outside of Missouri. We distribute all through Missouri. So if you're near Missouri, in Missouri, pick up some Snapper IPA, some Bobber Lager. Those are my favorites. Mammut, English Mild. Those are my favorites.
Oh, you guys do it English mild regularly.
I know how you feel about English Milds, Brian. You have to do it.
Oh, man. I gotta make my way to Missouri. Long time, not very long time. Followers of the podcast will remember that Missouri was the first state that we featured when I took over. We featured Kansas City, and MC was our co-host there. So I got to get to Kansas City. I got to get to Columbia. I have been to St. Louis. I was a little kid. No, I did not drink beer. I was 17 when I went there.
You got to go back. There's so much good beer.
Yes, side project. I mean, so many good breweries.
So many good places. So yes.
Anheuser-Busch. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
No, their tours are supposed to be really fun. Seriously.
It would be cool to see a big.
Everybody listening, don't think of Missouri as a non-beer state. It is a heavy beer state. Come visit. After
Speaking.
Missoula.
Yeah, kind of make a little trail. But that's what we're doing here at Brews Less Traveled for you. We're making a little map so you can take a road trip. Shout out to the first person that does the exact road trip that we're trying to plan on here. You have a beer at a bar on me for the rest of your life. Boy, I hope that is a promise I don't have to uphold. But shout out to Draftworks for providing great beer for this episode. We'll have some more beer from them next week, and we'll definitely learn more about that brewery from our guest, possibly guests next week. Until then, you can learn more about Draftworks at draftworksbrewery.com. If you like this show and want to support us and try awesome beers from small breweries across the country, then head over to brewvonit.com and sign up for the beer club. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Untapped. We'll be back next week with another episode. But until then, stay safe, be kind, and support your local breweries. Cheers, everybody. Woo. My power didn't go out.